dinner with great music. You can go to the website Viva Palestina, and then, as I told you, next Saturday I'll lead the convoy off on its way to Gaza. But the show goes on every Friday and Saturday night. The mother of all talk shows continues, convoy notwithstanding. 08717 223344. That's the number to call. We're talking about population, talking about torture, but I also want to talk about Carol Thatcher. Now, I didn't come in here this evening with a view to attacking Carol Thatcher, I must tell you. I've met her several times. I've worked with her on television and on radio, and well, I quite liked her, I must tell you. I thought she was a very jolly hockey sticks type of person, slightly eccentric, more than slightly eccentric, no doubt as a result of her background, but a person with a heart, if not a heart of gold. But I have The Guardian in front of me, and according to The Guardian, what she said, not once but multiple references, renders her unfit to be broadcasting on the public service broadcaster. Here's what The Guardian says. Carol Thatcher made multiple references describing a French mixed-race tennis player as a gollywog, a half-gollywog, and a gollywog frog. And she did this in the green room with other guests and other employees of the BBC present, some of whom were themselves of mixed race, or as Carol perhaps would have it, half gollywogs. This kind of language is beneath contempt. We know that it exists. We imagine perhaps that it exists most in the sink of society. But actually we've discovered over the last few weeks that the bluest of the bloods, that the toffee-nosed of the toffs, are the people who are carrying around these offensive, filthy ideas about other people's ethnicity most close to their own lips. We've had the Prince of Wales, what was it he called his friend? Sooty. We've had Prince Edward calling people mongs, M-O-N-G. Prince Harry, what did I say, William? Better get my princes right. The Prince of Wales said Sooty. The Prince of Wales called his polo partner Sooty. His son, Prince Harry, called people mongs and called other people the P word and raghead and so on. And it's all pouring out, isn't it? We've now got a situation where Carol Thatcher has been sacked from the one show on the BBC, and rightly so, in my opinion. However, Jonathan Ross, I've just been watching him large as life and his pockets just as full on BBC One, and we all know what he said and did. And as for Jeremy Clarkson, this is a man being paid by the taxpayer through the government, who goes to a foreign country and describes the Prime Minister in a news conference as a one-eyed Scottish idiot. Now, he is Scottish, and you might think he's an idiot. But when you put all of these three things together, a one-eyed Scottish idiot, well, it's the sort of thing that you can say if you're a free agent, but not if you work for the BBC. I really don't understand the double standards that are being applied here. Thatcher gets the sack. Clarkson can apologise and get off, if I may put it this way, scot-free. And Jonathan Ross gets a minor period of suspension and is back unrepentant. It's a very odd set of circumstances. But the bigger picture is, why are Britain's ruling class such filthy racists? Discuss. 08717 223344. Here's Stephen in Leeds, got a different point of view. That's why he's up next. Go ahead, Stephen.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
You know, when we had the Gollywog and Robertson's Jams, did we ever associate it with black people? No, we...
Black people did, and that's the point, Stephen, you see. You have to walk in the other fellow's shoes. We, when we describe people as Watermelon Smiled, grinning pickaninnies, didn't regard it as offensive. The problem for us is that the people about whom it was being said did. We may not have thought the gollywog on the Robertson's jam jar was offensive. The problem was black people thought that it was. You might not think calling someone a cripple is offensive, but a person with disabilities does. And that's the point, Stephen. It's about good manners.
George, you're not letting me have my say. No, I know a lot of black people who didn't find it offensive.
Well, I just don't believe you. They may have told you that they didn't find it offensive. I'm not calling you a liar. That would be to do a Jeremy Clarkson. But I don't believe that they didn't find it offensive.
George, you have called me a liar in the past, a year ago.
Well, just don't tempt me, Stephen, to call you again. Go on and make your point. Go on and make your point.
No, if you allow me to talk, we now have a situation this week that there's a rugby league team called the Celtic Crusaders who have just gone into the Super League. Now we find out that the Muslims in this country object to the word Crusaders.
Well, so do I, Stephen.
Why? George, you're hijacking the English language.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are, George.
I'm allowed to object to a team of British people calling themselves Crusaders. Why? Because the crusade, for me, is an offensive term. It's an offensive period when we went across the world to conquer other people's countries, suppress them in the name of a Christian crusade.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Every time you ban something, you actually create racism in this country. That's what actually happens. And it's not just the English, the elite in this country. You can go across you can go across loads of white English class working classes.
Stephen, I believe me, do not regard you as part of the elite. And I'm perfectly willing to believe that you use this kind of language all the time.
No, I don't.
I'm perfectly willing to believe it.
No, George, I don't use this language, but you're actually missing the point. When you ban something, you create racism. Don't you get it? Don't you understand? You're an intelligent man. Don't you understand?
Okay, let me ask you, Stephen, because it is important, I'm sure you'll agree, to be able to walk in the other person's shoes.
Sure.
Let me tell you, I'm looking at a very cool young black man right now. Handsome, gifted, and black. Right now, through the glass, okay?
Right.
If he tells you that calling him a gollywog is deeply offensive and insulting to him, does that not matter to you?
It matters. Well, I'm going to tell you, there shouldn't be such a stir. I'm going to tell you one final thing, George.
No,
George,
Stephen, answer me. Answer my question. Because you don't have an answer, do you?
There you go again. You're ranting and you're raving on. You're not allowing me to talk.
Stephen,
you're not allowed to see my point. Can I just make a remark to you?
Just before you do, I'm not cutting you off, Stephen. I'll keep you on. I'm asking you. The young man I'm looking at, I can assure you, if I called him a gollywog, he would find it deeply insulting and offensive. Does that not matter to you?
Of course it matters to me.
Well, why should we do it? Why should we do it?
Can I say, the word, when you say Prince Charles, sooty, I mean, I don't actually get it. The person...
I know you don't get it, Stephen.
No, the person who he called sooty too wasn't offended, was he, George?
Well, how could he declare that he was offended, Stephen, when the man calling him it was the heir to the British throne?
George, if he wanted to if he was offended, he would have come out and offended. And I'll say one final thing to you, George. I'm Jewish. If somebody called me a yid, I wouldn't be offended.
Would you not? Well, I'm astounded at that.
George, I'm above all this, George.
No, well, Stephen, if somebody called you a yid in my presence, I would break their jaw.
No, why?
Because it's a disgusting, racist slur.
George, it isn't, George.
It is.
It is the context of how the expression is said, not the actual word itself, George. It is how it is said, George. Probably Carol Thatcher. She's a rather unpleasant individual, is Carol Thatcher. And, I think she got what she deserved because, number one, she didn't apologise. You've always got to apologise when you made a remark, and she repeated it time and time again, according to reports. And so she should have been, I have no time for Carol Thatcher whatsoever.
But you don't mind being called a yid?
If a person calls me a yid, a person calls me a yid. I don't really